The next thing was this article that caught my attention from R Today. Let me share it. Share screen. Jamaican financial institutions cutting back on new loan disbursements will hurt the economy. And I was like, they're cutting back on new loans. So what is going on here? And that's a picture of Keith Duncan, chairman of EPOC. So it says, Jamaican financial institutions have had a tough year. They have had to contend with a high interest rate regime, elevated inflation, mark-to-market impacts, asset tax, a flat equities market, a decline in consumer spend. A cursory look at earnings reports over the last 6 months tells the story. And I can tell you that is a fact as well. Now comes news from EPOC that disbursements of new loans to the private sector in June 2024 declined by $17.4 billion. And the significance of that, it is almost 24%. That's a big decline compared to June 2023, bringing the total for April to June to 185 billion, down from almost 190 billion for the same quarter in 2023. So what that is saying, the private sector has less access to capital, less access to loans right now. According to EPOC, the quarter's reduction stemmed from an almost 18% decline in credit to business across all productive sectors except agriculture. I'm guessing agriculture was spared because they needed it after burial, and demonstrates the impact of the BOJ's ongoing tight monetary policy over the past 3 years. However, this was partially offset by a almost $14 billion increase in credit to individuals. So they're lending to people on an individual level. That has actually increased, maybe because time's harder, I don't know. But lending to businesses has decreased. The productive sector should be the engine of growth of the Jamaican economy, and that engine has to be fueled by capital. You have a picture of Auburn Hill there, Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce. And he's saying that SMEs should step up and play a bigger role in Jamaica's economy. But then how will they step up if they're getting less access to credit? He says these businesses will need funding for goods and services, machinery, inventory expansion. In short, backing from Jamaican financial institutions. Exactly the point I was just making. If there is a significant slowdown in new loan disbursements, this will negatively impact growth. Already, tourism and remittances are down. And need I remind you that tourism and remittances are two of the largest contributors to Jamaica's economy. If I remember correctly, each of these contributes about 20% of Jamaica's GDP. That's money sent home by family and friends abroad and tourism. These are two massive sectors of the economy, and these are down. And now we're seeing that productive sector essentially is down as well because they're not getting the access to the capital that they need. With financial houses taking a reticent view on loan disbursement, Jamaica will become an even more difficult place to do business. Seems obvious, right? Last month, the BOJ magnanimously, fun use of word there, reduced its policy rate by 25 basis points to 6.75%. This week, the Federal Reserve's benchmark short-term rate came down by 50 basis points and is now in the 4.75% to 5% range from a 23-year high of 5.25 to 5.5%. The Fed cut rates for the first time in 4 years. And if you remember at the end of last week's Taking Stock, we were talking about that. What was the Fed going to do? And we were even debating, how much percentage points, or how many percentage points or basis points the Fed was going to cut those interest rates by, 25 being on the conservative side, 75 being on the higher side, the more ambitious side, and then 50 being, I guess, right there in the middle, and they went for 50. I said that I thought it would be no less than 50, so 50 to 75, they went with 50. And lots of excitement, as you can imagine, in the financial world following that announcement last week, Wednesday. And then the article continues, many see this as a signal that the BOJ should go further at the end of this month with a reduction of 50 basis points. And thanks to Philip in the chat, who reminded me that the BOJ's next policy rate decision is due on September 30. So yes, that is within a few days. Today's the 24th. So next week, Monday, is the date of that announcement. So let's see how the BOJ responds and if they are going to do another interest rate cut and if it will be as aggressive as this article is suggesting, 50 basis points. The BOJ may view that as a tad optimistic given an uptick in inflation, which is now outside the 4 to 6% band. Indeed, that is something for us to consider because remember that the impact of Hurricane Beryl is only now being reported in the numbers. Yes, we've been seeing the $1,000 tomato and sweet pepper in the supermarkets, but remember that there is a lag between the time that we experience it and the time that the data is collected and reported to us in the public. So those numbers coming in for July and August are just now being reported officially. And so now the BOJ has the task of responding to that via its next policy rate decision. And they have indeed a difficult decision to make because of everything that's going on in the economy. All these points being raised by Keith Duncan and Auburn Hill and so many people in the financial sector who have been clamoring for the interest rates to come back down. And inflation has finally been coming back down, only for inflation to go back up because of Hurricane Beryl. So let's continue with the article. The BOJ may view this as optimistic given that inflation is now outside the band. It realizes that it has trouble playing its part in spurring growth, but is cognizant that it has to suppress runaway inflation. And inflation, I would venture to say, is issue number one right now for the Jamaican public and also for the Jamaican voting public. Because you see where the politics is right now? The JLP is now behind in the polls. And so this is going to become a hot political issue. Because even though we've been praising Nigel Clark, who's now moving on to the IMF, for the macroeconomic stability and the numbers that we've been seeing, the debt coming down, the investments in roads and so on, and all the things that have been achieved on the macro side, when it boils down to it, what voters care about, what we care about, is our own pocket. How does this affect me on a personal level? And the thing that is affecting most people on a personal level right now is inflation. Cost of living gone up. Food prices are so expensive. Rent gone up. Maybe turn into Shaba rice. Gone up, gone up. Flour stepping up, stepping up. Everything I raise up. One add up, but now raise the price add up. Pull up. School fees gone up, but the food prices is the one. Transportation prices. The food prices though. Every time I go to the supermarket, it's like, how much is it gonna be this time? Do I have to put back anything? Because it's just gotten so insane. And as this becomes a political issue, even though we now have the separation of the Bank of Jamaica from the government, these two are not supposed to influence each other. The government is not supposed to have influence on the BOJ. The BOJ is 100% independent. Who knows what political pressures are exercised behind the scenes as well? There is pressure to do something about inflation, because this is something that the people are feeling. I saw a video on TikTok today with Donald Trump going to a supermarket. Now, if there's one thing about Trump, he knows how to pander to the citizens, the proletariat, right? And so he went into a supermarket and he's looking at the cost of goods and pretending to be, shocked at how much things cost. But he knows that that is issue number one for the American public as well, the cost of living. things have just gotten so expensive. It's a major political issue both in the United States and here in Jamaica. So the article here continues, the dilemma of the BOJ, it will have to figure out that balancing inflation with, this whole thing about interest rates. Jamaican financial institutions have to date not reduced their rates, but have put up fees despite the signal from the central bank. Not reduced their rates, but have raised fees. So yes, we've seen reports of those fees going up yet again. They might not have raised the rates, but they raised their fees, despite the signal from the central bank. And I did say that the central bank reducing that policy rate by just 25 basis points is very modest, and we're not likely to see the impact of that very soon, certainly not this year. These banks and lending houses have their part to play and should not make the sole determination the cost of doing business. The BOJ will watch the spread between its rate and that of the Federal Reserve. Will it look to bring it back in line to where it was before COVID, bearing in mind it has a lot more reserves? The BOJ can become more aggressive around monetary policy easing, but will it be comfortable with such a move? There are those who share the sentiment of Chairman of Mayberry Investments, Christopher Berry, who says, time for a 150 basis point drop before the economy craters. That's a very ambitious number, Chris Berry. Berry would no doubt agree with Dan Irvin of Forbes, who writes about the Fed's rate cut. The robust rate cut could stimulate investment, spur consumer spending, and reinvigorate economic activity, fostering a more favorable environment for financial markets. Which brings into question, or which brings me to a question, I should say. What is the reason for these banks not lending as much to the private sector? Is it that the private sector is not requesting money as much? Have they reduced their borrowing needs because of where interest rates are? They don't want to borrow that much right now? Or is it that the banks are not lending as much because they don't want to take on the risk of lending right now, and they are not approving as many loans or not approving the amounts that are being requested? So I feel like more data is needed for us to better understand what is going on. Why has the lending declined? All right, so where's the Dan Irvin from Forbes saying the rate cut could stimulate investment, spur consumer spending, etc. Forbes's Rohit Arora adds, lower interest rates will lead to reduced interest payments for small business owners and could free up money for consumers that are hurting badly with all the credit card delinquency and with auto loan delinquency at record levels. Interestingly, I just read an article on, what is this, CBS. The Fed made its big cut on Wednesday. These products are already offering lower rates. So whereas the pass-through in Jamaica takes months to years, in the United States, we're seeing the impact coming almost immediately. The Fed made its cut Wednesday, and what day was this article published? The 24th, today. This article was published less than a week after the Fed made its interest rate cuts. Made a jumbo rate cut on Wednesday, as the central bank said it now wants to ease up on the economic brakes. That decision is already trickling down into lower rates on some lending products, potentially providing financial relief to millions of Americans. As of Monday, American Express and US Bank have lowered the offered APRs on several credit cards on their websites by 50 basis points, half a percentage point, which is the same amount as the Fed's rate cut last week, according to Lending Tree credit analyst Matt Schultz. Mortgage rates also dropped last week, decreasing to their lowest point since February 2023, according to Freddie Mac. So that pass-through is pass-throughing. That pass-through is coming in America. Meanwhile, over in Jamaica, it basically never happens. Oh, why is the screen looking like that? It's so small. I thought you guys were able to see along with me. Okay. Um, but anyway, I'm going to stop sharing that screen now because I think I've pretty much made the point. The pass through is pass through over in the United States. Over here in Jamaica, we are not seeing much of an impact. And indeed, it is time for us to start getting some relief. But we need relief on both fronts. And how is that possible? How is that achievable? Because we want interest rates to come down, but we also want inflation to come down. We want both things to exist and to happen at the same time. And so the central bank has this very difficult job of trying to somehow achieve both things and please both parties. Who do you please more? Do you please the business community at the expense of the ordinary person who cares more about inflation because the cost of living is just licking them over, especially in a time when we are rapidly approaching political season? General elections are coming due soon, next year. Constitutionally due 2025, but you've been hearing the reports. The polls are out, things are getting hot. And so these are going to be and already are hot political issues. All right, let me see some of your comments. And I also want to tie this into another point that I need to make about how we're doing at Money Media and a poll that I put out earlier this evening as well. So let me see some of the comments because a lot of you are weighing in. So Ricardo wanted to know, will all of this lead to a recession? There have been talks for some time in the US. It hasn't materialized yet. Strong Link wants to know, what if Trump wins with his tariffs? Remittances will dry up even more. Florida, Kingston 26, real estate market bubble bursting. I saw a video, a TikTok again. I've been on TikTok a lot these past couple of days. Somebody posted a video saying me waiting on Jamaica's real estate bubble to burst since 2020, and it just it just keeps going up. It doesn't come down. Life Roots, is this a plan to get rid of the SMEs? This is serious. I don't think anybody wants to get rid of the SMEs. We all know SMEs are the lifeblood of our economy. They represent the majority of businesses in Jamaica and the majority of employment in Jamaica. Stronglink says, inflation all over the world. Roswell, I have cash flow business, not a 9 to 5, so then I can pay myself on time to meet demand. It's good for you, Roswell. Stronglink says, Trump going to McDonald's to serve fries. Did he? I don't know. If he did, I didn't see that one. That one missed me, but I did see him in the supermarket buying groceries and talking to people. Life Root says, food prices are out of reach for the average person. And that's just a fact. The prices are insane. Garfield says, if the IG probe was on a lesser person, those rubbishing it would say they did a good job. It's the Integrity Commission, IC probe. Most national issues in Jamaica are looked at with a partisan political eye. Roswell says, things will get expensive. That's why the concentration can't be on just working hard. We won't catch up with movement in food price with regular working hours. Invest. Strong Link saying, put more pressure on the dollar if rates are cut too deep. And we've seen how the dollar's been moving. 160 is very close. And the BOJ, I feel like they've been trying their best to keep it, below 160. But it's been inching in that direction. Terry says, politics and popularism is the order of the day in this silly election season, so don't expect any major movements in the Jamaican financial sector, i.e. interest rate cuts, etc., etc. Lots of things going on. Sean says, the BOJ seriously needs a heavy rate cut. Jamaica is not the same as the US, and we don't have the same experience or history to know the consequences of what the BOJ does. So this could end badly. Yeah.